The sky over Aurora 7 was broken. Jagged clouds glowed with streaks of lightning, and the wind howled like a wild animal across the jagged cliffs. The colony's small settlement clung to the edge of a crumbling plateau, and every gust threatened to rip roofs off and topple scaffolding. Humans had always survived here because they were clever, fast, and brave. But today survival was not enough. Liam Caro stood at the edge of the cliff, boots gripping loose rock. He was just 16, but his hands were steady and sure, capable of fixing anything from a failing oxygen line to the colony's hover lifts. The storm whipped his hair into his eyes, but he barely noticed. Something else had caught his attention, a sound unlike the wind, high and desperate. He followed it to a jagged outcrop below, where the ground had cracked under the meteor strike that had hit only hours ago. Smoke curled from blackened rocks, and beneath a shattered spire lay a tiny, glowing figure. It was a hatchling no bigger than Liam's chest, with scales that shone like molten gold. One leg was trapped under a heavy slab, and its chest rose and fell in panicked, shallow gasps. "Stay still," Liam said softly, dropping to his knees. He ignored the adults who shouted from behind, warning him of the storm and the crumbling cliffs. Most of them wanted to run. Most of them didn't have the courage to risk their lives for a creature they barely understood. Liam didn't hesitate. His heart pounded, but he was calm. "Don't cry," he whispered. "My big brother can fix it." He didn't have a big brother. But in that moment he became one. The hatchling's golden eyes blinked slowly as if it understood, and for the first time, Liam saw hope flare in the tiny creature's gaze. The slab of rock trapping the hatchling was massive, heavier than anything Liam could move alone. He tested it, pushing with his shoulder, straining with every ounce of strength. The rock barely shifted. Behind him, the storm tore at the cliff, and every moment made the situation more dangerous. One misstep, and both he and the hatchling could tumble into the abyss below. Liam's mind raced. He scanned the rubble, looking for anything that could help. Pieces of broken machinery, shards of the colony's hoverlift, even a thick cable from a nearby generator. He grabbed a long metal beam and wedged it under the rock, using it as a lever. Sweat ran down his face, but he kept working. Inch by inch the slab moved. The hatchling squeaked in relief and pain, twisting its small body in fear. "Almost there," Liam muttered, adjusting the beam. The storm was growing worse, rain slicing across his skin like tiny knives. Lightning struck a nearby spire, sending sparks and molten rock flying. He had to work faster. If the rock shifted wrong, it could crush the hatchling completely. A new danger appeared. A jagged piece of debris threatened to fall from above. Liam froze, calculating. He could pull the hatchling free now, but the debris could strike him. Most humans would have waited for safety. Liam didn't. He anchored himself with a cable to a stable part of the cliff, bracing against the wind and tremor. His body burned, muscles screaming, but he wouldn't let fear stop him. He pushed, gritting his teeth. The rock creaked, groaned, then slowly lifted. The hatchling's leg wriggled free. Liam grabbed it gently, cradling it close. The small dragon nuzzled his chest, and for a moment the storm faded around them. Its breathing was ragged, but it was alive. From the edge of the cliff, adults stared in awe. None of them had dared approach. None had risked themselves to save the creature. Liam's courage had done what fear could not. But the relief was short-lived. A low rumble shook the plateau, louder than the storm itself. Liam looked up. Above the nest, a massive spire, cracked from the meteor strike, began to shift. Rocks loosened and tumbled, threatening to crush everything below. The hatchling squirmed in his arms, panicked once more. Liam's mind raced. He had freed the hatchling, but now both of them were in greater danger than before. The cliff was unstable, the storm was relentless, and the rocks above threatened to collapse at any second. He knew he had to act quickly, or the hatchling would die anyway. He tightened his grip on the dragon and scanned the terrain. Hoverlift cables, fragments of broken machinery, anything he could use to survive this next challenge. His hands shook slightly, but his resolve didn't. "Hold on," he whispered to the hatchling. "I won't let anything happen to you." The wind tore at his jacket, lightning cracked dangerously close, and the rock above groaned ominously. Liam's heart pounded, but there was no time for fear. He had made a promise, and in his chest burned the determination of every human who had ever faced impossible odds. If he failed, both of them would die. If he succeeded, a bond would form that could change everything. Liam squared his shoulders, ready to face the next challenge, the one that would truly test his courage, his intelligence, and his determination to save a life that no one else dared risk. The slab of rock had moved, but the hatchling's danger was far from over. Liam cradled it in his arms, scanning the jagged cliffside for the next threat. The storm was relentless, battering him with wind and rain, lightning slicing through the dark sky in jagged white bolts. Below, the abyss yawned like a hungry beast. Above, the cracked spire threatened to collapse at any second. Every second counted. The hatchling struggled in his arms, its chest rising and falling rapidly. Its leg had been freed, but the wing was bent at an unnatural angle, scales glimmering in shades of gold and orange. Liam pressed a hand gently against the injury, his mind racing. There were no medkits for alien creatures here, no one to ask for guidance. One wrong move could break the wing completely. He needed a plan. Fast. Looking around, Liam's eyes fell on broken machinery scattered across the cliff. Pieces of the colony's hoverlifts, fragments of energy cables, shards of metal. Inspiration sparked. He could make a makeshift stretcher or brace for the wing using what he had. It wouldn't be perfect, but it could hold until he reached safer ground. "Okay, little one," he whispered, his voice steady despite the pounding of his heart. "We're going to do this together." He set the hatchling down on a flat patch of rock, keeping his body between it and the cliff's edge. With quick, precise movements, Liam tied two metal rods together using twisted cables. He shaped them into a crude splint and patted it with cloth torn from his jacket. The hatchling squealed, frightened, but he kept his hands gentle, murmuring encouragement. Every motion had to be perfect or the wing could snap. The storm wasn't waiting. A new roar shook the plateau, a tremor caused by the unstable meteor debris above. Liam froze, calculating. The cliff could give way at any moment. Most humans would have abandoned the hatchling, leaving it to die. But Liam was not most humans. He pressed on, bracing the rods against the hatchling's wing and securing them with strips of cable. The creature's golden eyes met his, full of panic, but also trust. Finally, the splint was done. Liam tested it gently, making sure the wing could move slightly but remain supported. The hatchling flinched but stayed still, seeming to understand that Liam was trying to help. A spark of pride ran through him. He had saved it once, and now he had given it a chance to survive the next wave of danger. But the cliff wasn't finished testing him. A massive chunk of debris tumbled from the spire above, missing him by inches and smashing into the rocks below with a deafening crash. Dust and pebbles rained down. The hatchling cried out, frightened. Liam's heart leapt. The spire was unstable. If another chunk fell, they could both be crushed. He grabbed the hatchling, tucking it close against his chest. The wind tried to rip it from his arms and his footing slipped on the wet rocks. One misstep and they would both fall into the stormy abyss. Liam's mind worked faster than the storm. He scanned the cliff and spotted a series of narrow ledges leading toward a more stable area. They were risky, but if he could reach them they could survive. He crouched, holding the hatchling tightly and tested each step. Rocks shifted under his weight. His boots slipped. Every second brought new danger. But he kept moving. Halfway across, a sudden gust slammed into him. He stumbled, nearly falling backward. The hatchling squealed, claws digging into his jacket. Liam steadied himself with a firm grip, planting his feet and adjusting his balance. He gritted his teeth and pressed forward. Humans had faced worse. Storms, predators, collapsing structures. But few had faced a test like this, with a fragile life in their hands and death waiting at every step. Finally he reached a slightly larger outcrop. The hatchling clung to him, trembling but alive. Liam let out a breath he hadn't realized he'd been holding. The storm was still raging, but here for a moment, they had a small reprieve. He knew it wouldn't last. The spire above was still unstable. Any second a larger collapse could wipe out this ledge too. Liam's eyes flicked to a broken hoverlift cable coiled nearby. He could use it as a safety line, anchoring himself and the hatchling while crossing the most dangerous section ahead. He tied the cable around his waist, tested the tension and tightened it. The hatchling nuzzled against his chest, trusting him completely. Liam's chest swelled with determination. He had come this far. He would not let fear stop him. Not now. The storm's wind screamed louder, the cliff groaned, and a new tremor shook the plateau. Liam's heart pounded in sync with the hatchling's shallow breathing. Ahead, the ledge narrowed to a jagged knife edge, barely wide enough to stand on. One slip, one miscalculation, and they would both plunge into the abyss below. Liam's hands tightened around the hatchling. His jaw set. "We can do this," he whispered, more to himself than to the creature. "Just a little farther." The wind roared. Rocks threatened to fall. The hatchling's trust weighed on him like iron, and gave him strength. He stepped forward, inch by inch, across the knife edge, every movement precise, every breath measured. The cliff seemed alive, testing him, pushing him to the limit. And then, a massive shadow moved above them. A chunk of the meteor spire cracked, splitting the air with a thunderous roar. Liam's heart leapt. The ledge shook beneath him. He tightened his hold on the hatchling, bracing for the next impossible move. He had saved it once, but the storm was far from over. The real test, getting both of them to safety, was only beginning. The ledge trembled beneath Liam's boots, but he forced himself to stay calm. The hatchling rested against his chest, its golden eyes wide and filled with pain. Its wing was bent at a cruel angle, scales cracked, and smoke still curled from the singed tips. Every shallow breath it took made Liam's heart ache. He had managed to free it from the slab of rock and navigate the narrow cliff, but now the real challenge began. Healing it enough to survive the storm and the treacherous descent ahead. He crouched, scanning the jagged outcrop. The colony's medkits were useless for alien anatomy. Chemicals could burn the wrong tissue. Bandages were too weak. Liam's mind raced. He needed something strong, something flexible and fast. Then he spotted it, a deposit of crystallized plasma embedded in the cliffside. It was normally used to fuel emergency generators. It glowed faintly, humming with latent energy. Liam's pulse quickened. Plasma could seal wounds. If applied carefully, it could cauterize the dragon's damaged wing without killing the delicate tissue beneath. But it was dangerous. One mistake, one spark in the wrong place and he could fry the hatchling alive. Most humans would have frozen in fear. Liam didn't. He gathered fragments of the plasma crystal, weighing them in his hands, testing the edges. They were sharp and heavy but manageable. Using strips torn from his jacket, he secured the hatchling to his chest, keeping it still. Its small claws dug into his jacket, tense with panic, but he murmured softly, "I won't hurt you. Trust me." The dragon's eyes blinked slowly as if considering his words. Liam had to believe that trust could bridge species, even in the heart of chaos. He rigged a small plasma torch from his welding kit, the only tool capable of controlling the crystal's energy safely. Sparks flared as he adjusted the flame, testing the heat on a piece of metal first. It sizzled, then stabilized. This would work, but timing and precision were everything. The hatchling whimpered, smoke rising from its damaged wing. Liam took a deep breath. He had no backup, no safety net. Just him, his courage, and his careful hands. Inch by inch, he applied the plasma to the broken edges of the wing. The smoke swirled around them, mixing with the storm, but Liam kept his focus sharp. Every movement was deliberate, every spark calculated. The hatchling's breathing grew shallow, then steadied. The plasma had sealed the deep gashes, leaving the wing flexible but stabilized. Liam gently tested it, wincing at the creature's small cry. But the wing held. The hatchling shifted, tilting its head toward him in recognition. A flicker of understanding passed between them. Liam's hands shook slightly, but inside he felt a surge of triumph. He had done the impossible. But the storm was far from done testing him. The jagged spire above groaned louder, and new cracks split its surface. Rocks rained down, forcing Liam to shield the hatchling with his body. One chunk of debris slammed against the ledge near them, dislodging loose stones. Liam adjusted his stance, bracing against the cliffside. He realized the outcrop they were on wouldn't hold for long. Every second brought the threat of collapse. Looking ahead, he saw a narrow path of broken rocks leading to a safer plateau. It was risky, but the hatchling could not survive here. Liam needed to move it, carefully, methodically, without faltering. He attached the remaining plasma crystal fragments to his belt, using them as a stabilizing counterweight, and tested the ledge's edges with his boots. Loose stones shifted underfoot, but he adjusted his balance. The hatchling whimpered again, sensing danger. Liam whispered, "I'm here. I won't let go. Not now." The trust in its eyes strengthened his resolve. Humans had survived far worse: storms, collapsing habitats, hostile planets, but none had done it while carrying a fragile, intelligent life across death itself. Liam's courage burned brighter than the plasma in his hands. He began the careful crawl across the ledge. Each step was a battle against gravity, wind, and fear. The hatchling clung to him, its weight small but precious, a life dependent entirely on human ingenuity and bravery. Lightning cracked dangerously close, illuminating the jagged cliffs and casting eerie shadows across the storm-tossed terrain. Liam ignored it, focusing on each foothold, each handhold, each careful adjustment of the hatchling's position. Halfway across, a new threat appeared. A slab above them began to slip. Dust and pebbles fell. Liam froze for a heartbeat, then acted. Using a piece of fractured cable from the colony's hoverlift, he anchored himself to a nearby rock. With careful leverage, he prevented the slab from crushing them. It rattled, groaned, then settled. The hatchling nuzzled his chest, sensing relief. Finally they reached the stable plateau. Liam let out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. The hatchling moved slightly, testing its plasma-sealed wing. It flexed, stiff but functional. Liam smiled faintly, brushing rain from his eyes. He had saved it, not just from the slab but from the storm and its own injuries. For a moment they rested. The storm still raged around them and the cliffs groaned ominously, but here, Liam had carved a small pocket of safety. The hatchling's golden eyes met his, full of recognition, trust, and something like gratitude. But Liam knew this was only temporary. The plateau might hold for now, but the path down to the colony was still treacherous. One wrong move, one lapse in focus, and they could tumble into the abyss. He adjusted the harness and the makeshift splint again, securing the hatchling as best he could. Its small head rested against his shoulder, eyes wide but calm. Liam's jaw set. He had proven his courage and intelligence so far, but the true test, getting both of them safely to the colony, was still ahead. And above them, the storm showed no signs of relenting. The storm showed no mercy. Rain lashed at Liam's face, cutting through his jacket, blinding him for brief, furious moments. Thunder cracked across the sky like a whip, and the jagged cliffs groaned under the weight of the meteor's destruction. Each step forward was a gamble. One miscalculation could send him and the hatchling plummeting into the storm-churned abyss below. Liam scanned the terrain. The plateau they rested on was unstable. Cracks spider-webbed across the rock, expanding with each tremor. The path down to the colony stretched before them, narrow and slick, littered with jagged shards of broken spire and dislodged boulders. The hatchling whimpered, sensing the danger, but its golden eyes locked on Liam's. Trust. Pure, unwavering trust. He gritted his teeth. Humans survived on courage and intelligence. Now it was time to prove it. Liam began moving, careful but quick, testing each step with the heel of his boot. Rocks shifted underfoot, threatening to topple him, but he adjusted instantly, keeping the hatchling pressed to his chest. Its fragile wing, stabilized with the plasma splint, flexed against his chest. He whispered to it, though the words were barely audible over the storm. Just a little farther. We're going to make it. A sudden crack above sent a shower of pebbles down. Liam ducked instinctively, using his shoulder as a shield. One chunk of debris slammed near them, bouncing off the ledge and shattering into fragments. His heart raced. The cliff was alive, testing him, daring him to fail. Humans had faced storms and collapsing structures before, but few had done it while carrying a creature who relied entirely on their skill and courage. The path narrowed. Now it was barely a knife edge of stone with nothing but air and jagged rocks below. Liam's pulse surged, but he forced himself to move steadily. 1 foot in front of the other. Every inch counted. The hatchling clung to him, claws digging into his jacket, small whimpers escaping its mouth. He murmured encouragement, trying to keep both of their hearts steady. Halfway across, a larger threat appeared. A section of the cliff had shifted, leaving a yawning gap between them and the next stable ledge. Liam froze, weighing his options. The wind tore at him, trying to push him backward. Rain slicked his boots. The hatchling squealed, sensing hesitation. Humans improvise. Humans survive. Humans leap. Liam's eyes darted around. The broken hoverlift cable coiled nearby. He grabbed it, wrapping it around his waist like a lifeline, anchoring himself to a jagged rock. His mind calculated angles, distances, and the force of the wind. Then he crouched, testing the stretch of the cable and the gap. It was risky. A miscalculation could snap the cable or send them both tumbling. But fear was a luxury he couldn't afford. He tightened his grip on the hatchling. "Hold on," he whispered. He ran toward the gap, sprinting as fast as the slick rock would allow, then jumped. The wind tore at them, the hatchling clinging desperately. The cable held, stretching under their combined weight. Liam swung across the chasm, arms straining, legs pumping to maintain momentum. Below them, the abyss yawned like a beast, lightning illuminating the depths. With one final heave, they landed on the stable ledge. Liam rolled, letting the momentum carry him, and came up quickly, panting. The hatchling tumbled in his arms, then nuzzled him instinctively. Its wing, though stiff and battered, had survived. But the storm wasn't finished. The cliff above groaned again, sending a cascade of small rocks toward them. Liam didn't hesitate. He grabbed the hatchling and sprinted toward the next ledge, moving faster than any human should have been able to under such conditions. Rain stung his eyes, mud sucked at his boots, and lightning split the sky overhead. One misstep could still send them plummeting, but his mind was clear, focused, every movement precise. They reached the final stretch, a broken ridge leading down to a narrow natural ramp. Liam paused briefly, heart hammering, assessing the landing zone. He wrapped the hatchling tightly against him, crouched low, and sprinted. The storm screamed around him, and the ridge shook as if the planet itself was testing their resolve. Then he jumped. Gravity pulled hard, wind buffeting them from all sides. He landed with a solid thud, rolling to absorb the impact. The hatchling squealed, then pressed against his chest, safe for the moment. Liam rose, boots slick with mud, muscles screaming, eyes scanning the terrain. The colony was just ahead, a small cluster of lights and domed shelters glinting through the storm. Safety. Finally, safety. He ran the last stretch, each step a battle against exhaustion. Behind him, the cliffs rumbled ominously, but they held. The hatchling's small claws dug into his jacket, nuzzling his neck as if to thank him. Liam's chest heaved, sweat and rain mingling, but a grin broke through. He had done it. Against impossible odds, he had carried the hatchling through a storm that would have crushed anyone else. Humans survive. Humans protect. Humans rise. As they reached the colony's outer fence, Liam knelt, gently setting the hatchling down on the muddy ground. It stretched its wings carefully, testing the plasma-splinted limb. They worked. The hatchling blinked at him, eyes shining with recognition and trust. Liam patted its head softly. The storm raged on, but for now they were safe. Liam knew the hatchling would live because of his courage, his ingenuity, and his refusal to surrender to fear. Humans had faced impossible odds on Aurora 7 before, but today they had proven that intelligence, bravery, and determination could overcome even the harshest alien world. And the hatchling, golden eyes fixed on him, seemed to understand. Trust had been forged in the storm, and Liam knew it was unbreakable. The storm had passed, leaving the colony soaked and trembling under the aftermath. Rain still dripped from jagged cliffs, but the winds no longer tore at the settlement. Broken metal and shattered rocks littered the plateau, evidence of the meteor strike and the chaos it had caused. The humans moved cautiously now, stepping over debris, eyes wide at the sight of the hatchling resting safely in the center of the plateau. Liam knelt beside it, brushing mud from its golden scales. The creature's wing, once mangled and smoke-stained, now rested in the plasma splint he had carefully applied. It flexed experimentally, scales glimmering in the weak light, and chirped softly. Liam smiled, exhausted but proud. He had promised to save it, and he had kept that promise. Humans did not just survive on Aurora 7, they endured, they protected, and they proved their courage in ways no one else could. Around him, the other colonists stared in stunned silence. Many had never witnessed a human move with such daring and precision under impossible odds. Most had frozen when rocks fell, when winds screamed, when the hatchling cried. Only Liam had acted. Only Liam had trusted his own skill, his intelligence, and his heart. And in doing so, he had changed the course of one small life, and perhaps the perception of all humans in the colony. The hatchling lifted its head, golden eyes locking on Liam's. It nuzzled his shoulder, then tapped its small, clawed foot against his chest. Liam chuckled softly. "Yeah, we made it," he said, voice still thick from exertion. "You're safe now." A few adults cautiously approached, offering hands and praise, but Liam waved them off. "No one else could have done this," he said. "It wasn't safe for anyone but me to get close. We need to make sure it stays that way until it heals fully." His tone was firm, carrying authority but also compassion. Humans could command respect through bravery, and Liam's courage had already spoken for itself. The hatchling stretched its wings fully, the plasma splint holding firm. It flapped experimentally, testing balance, then chirped again, louder this time, almost joyfully. Liam's heart soared. This tiny creature, so dependent on him moments ago, now displayed resilience and life. It trusted him completely. And in that trust, Liam felt something extraordinary, a connection not bound by words, but by action and courage. "Your big brother," someone whispered behind him, the words trembling with disbelief. Liam turned. It was Mara, a colony engineer who had spent hours trying to organize safety protocols while the storm raged. "You really?" She stopped, shaking her head. "You saved it. Nobody else could." Liam's hands tightened on the hatchling gently. "I didn't have a choice," he said simply. "If I didn't try, it would have died. Humans survive. Humans protect. Humans rise." His voice was calm, but the weight of every word carried the proof of his actions. The colony had seen courage, ingenuity, and determination embodied in one boy. The hatchling nudged him again, then looked toward the cliffs. It chirped softly, almost as if warning him of danger, then flapped its wings, testing its strength. Liam stood slowly, letting it stretch. He realized something remarkable. The creature had learned to trust humans, but only because a human had risked everything for it. That bond was unbreakable, forged in storm, fear, and unyielding courage. As the storm clouds parted, revealing the jagged horizon of Aurora 7, other humans began to move more confidently across the plateau. Some began clearing debris, while others reinforced damaged buildings. Liam looked around. The colony would survive this disaster, not because of luck, but because humans could act decisively when others froze. Because humans could see what needed to be done, even when the odds were stacked impossibly against them. He knelt beside the hatchling again. "You'll be all right," he murmured. "We'll make sure you can fly again." Its golden eyes met his, and Liam felt a deep, unspoken understanding. The bond between human and dragon was not born from words or promises. It was born from courage, action, and unwavering determination in the face of impossible odds. In the days that followed, Liam tended to the hatchling, teaching it to move, fly, and navigate its new world. The colony watched in awe, realizing that humans were not just fragile survivors. They were protectors, problem solvers, and heroes in their own right. The hatchling flourished under Liam's care, growing stronger and more confident, yet always returning to him, trusting him completely. And Liam? He had learned something too. Humans could rise above fear. They could act when others hesitated. They could survive storms, rescue lives, and forge trust where none existed before. And most importantly, humans could change the fate of others through courage, intelligence, and unwavering determination. The colony would never forget the day Liam Caro carried a young dragon through a collapsing cliff and a raging storm, facing impossible odds with nothing but courage and cleverness. And the hatchling would never forget the human who became more than a savior. He became family. As the sun finally pierced through the clouds, reflecting off the dragon's golden scales, Liam looked out over Aurora 7. The world was harsh, wild, and dangerous, but humans could shine even in the darkest storms. One small life saved, one leap of faith, one act of courage. Sometimes that was all it took to show what humanity could do. And for the hatchling nestled against him, Liam's courage would never be forgotten. Trust had been forged in fire, and it would endure as long as humans chose to rise.